Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Flesh and Blood and Bone podcast. We finally have a name for our podcast.
Yes.
Hopefully no one sues us. And it's, as you can tell, we probably look different from the last episode. And that's because we basically filmed it like over a year ago because life has happened and my dad has been filming not the second season, but also the third season of the Chucky TV series.
Until the SAG strike.
Until the SAG strike, which we are currently in. And I finished and sold my documentary on the Child's Play franchise called Living with Chucky. You can watch it on Screambox, Amazon Prime, and Apple TV. Shameless plug for myself.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. So we didn't really have formats going into the other podcast episodes. I've kind of figured out a system that hopefully you enjoy. I would love to get feedback. Today's episode is on Return of the Living Dead. Da da da! We have a poster, a mini poster, and my dad's wearing a You Need a Medical Supply shirt for those of you listening at home.
Yeah.
And we have a mini Return of the Living Dead poster here behind us, signed by
Many people from the cast and crew, some of which are no longer with us.
This is history.
Because time marches on and waits for no one.
Time's arrow marches on. That's sad. Well, I'm happy you have that.
Me too.
That's nice.
I'm super excited. I actually signed it for a fan who was collecting signatures, and then he sold it online, and I bought it.
You bought back your signature?
I bought back the poster I signed, yeah.
Amazing. It's a full circle moment.
I thought it was cool.
No, I would have done it.
Yeah.
The story of my dad starting to work on Return of the Living Dead is one that I hope you find interesting because when my dad has shared it with me, it's been very inspirational for if you have imposter syndrome like we all do and kind of just like rolling with whatever and the definition of kind of faking it till you make it. I want to take you back in time. The year is 1984 because that's when you were doing it.
83, I think.
Just kidding.
I'm not sure, to be honest.
We don't know the year. So let me take you back to 1983 or 4.
Early 80s.
Early 80s.
Where this hairstyle was normal.
Yes. It was the early 80s. Night of the Living Dead, the first of the franchise, had already released back in 1968, directed by George A. Romero. Although the concept of quote-unquote zombies was not new, the film itself established much of the modern zombie subgenre that we know in film today. Back in 1984, the slasher genre had already been established, and slashers were well into their sequels. We had Halloween 3 and Friday the 13th, the final chapter, which is ironically the fourth in its respective franchise. America had just seen a recession in '81, and it was a time of political paranoia and re-escalation of the Cold War. As art imitates life, the horror genre started to reflect the state of the world. Psychological horror thrillers like Nightmare on Elm Street had just been released with killers who didn't stalk you, but rather your dreams. Subverting the genre by giving the main killer one-liners and a wickedly dark sense of humor, later to inspire Chucky's character in the Child's Play franchise in '88. Meanwhile, Return of the Living Dead was gearing up for a punk take on its respective zombie genre, taking what Romero had already established in the first and cementing the zombie trope we know today, that zombies eat brains. And my dad is how old?
Oh my God. All right, I was in college. I was between my sophomore and junior year. I was trying to go to school and start work at the same time. I was a student at USC, and I was offered a job on Michael Jackson's Thriller. Tried to keep going to school at the same time. Dropped out of school.
Beauty school dropout. No graduation day for you.
But stayed friends with all my school friends. Also stayed in the frat house I was living in. Also stayed a drummer in the marching band at USC because I didn't tell them I dropped out of school. And then hoped that I would start working at Rick's again eventually. We were working during the day. He started up on Cocoon as a consultant. We were using his shop to build the stuff. Greg Cannon was supervising it. And I was approached by Brian Peck, one of my student friends at USC.
Who I'm currently dressed as, for those at home, his character in Return of the Living Dead, Scuzz.
Minus the
Minus-
shaving and the tattoo.
Yeah, I tried.
Giant.
I didn't want to shave my head. I also don't have blonde hair, but, I did what I could. Anyhow, continue.
Brian had auditioned for a horror movie and gotten the part and felt that he was too clean cut, too much of a preppy, because he was. And he's like, I'm playing a punk rocker named Scuzz, and I'm going to have a mohawk, and I want to see what I can do to look worse. So could you make me a set of teeth? And I said, sure. I made him an upper veneer that was like crooked teeth and a little stained. One was like a steel tooth.
Sorry to interject here. How did you make these said teeth? Because this is also a story. You're at college, you're doing your thing.
Well,
and somebody approaches you to make them fake teeth. What did you do, Dad?
I'd already sort of gotten to know the dental lab at USC and made friends with some people there. And I had, they were letting me buy dental alginate and dental acrylics and stuff like that. And so I had sort of like a little bit of
A side hustle going on.
Shop sort of setup. I had enough supplies to at least make some teeth for somebody. So I made the teeth, and he went to a cast read-through of the script at the director's house, which is Dan O'Bannon, who did Alien.
He wrote it.
He wrote it. Yeah. And this was going to be his first directing job himself. And Brian went to this read-through, wore the teeth. The director loved them, asked Brian if he might be able to meet Brian's dentist friend.
You're a dentist friend.
He assumed that the teeth were made by a dentist as opposed to a 21-year-old college dropout.
Beauty school dropout.
So Brian didn't tell him that I was a student or ex-student. And just set up a meeting. And I went to Dan's house. I was thrilled because Alien was the film that sort of got me going doing this. Knocked on the door, and Dan O'Bannon answered and basically looked past me to see if, like,
who's behind you?
I had driven somebody there.
Nar.
And Brian came up behind him laughing and said, Dan, this is my dentist friend, Tony Gardner.
I'm a dentist and a sex sale.
And I went in, met Dan, which was great. I was happy. The evening could have ended there and I'd been fine. But Dan said he wanted to discuss the idea of some dental options for Beverly Randolph, who played Tina in the movie. And I said, well, the only thing we can do is add mass. We can't take away. So it changes the face and it changes diction based on how much coverage of the teeth it has. But he was still willing to try. So I cast Beverly's teeth and we experimented with a couple options. And while I was doing all that, I had some pictures of some things that I was working on my own to share. The poor man's portfolio, a stack of printed out photos in my pocket because cell phone cameras did not exist.
Because it's the early 80s. It's either 83 or 84. We don't know.
So I shared some photos, and one of the things I was doing was this dead corpse as a Halloween decoration, and it was this long blonde-haired female with like really super exposed teeth. And he's like, oh, that's really cool. We have something like that in our movie. There's this company building it, but they did like audio animatronics for theme parks. They were building the animatronic half corpse character for Dan's movie. He said that, everybody had already been hired. They were getting ready to start filming. All the stuff was underway, but my stuff was really cool. And then we got back to the business of teeth.
Okay.
And that progressed forward. And then, the name of the company was Sequoia.
Sequoia. Hey, girl.
While we were doing the teeth experiments on Beverly, this company, Sequoia, declared bankruptcy.
I declare bankruptcy!
And bailed on the film. And they were already filming. And Dan's like, this thing shoots in like a little over 2 weeks.
Oh my God.
We have nothing. And would you be interested in doing it? I really like the picture.
I would die.
So I was like, sure. And I asked Rick Baker if I could use the shop at night. I already had a day job, so I could only do it at night. So I kept my stuff upstairs in the storage space, up the stairs, on some boards. And I would work on Cocoon during the day. And at night, I would bring down all these boards and like
The movie Cocoon?
Yeah.
Who are you, dude? What the
I would work on the Half Corpse in the evenings.
Jesus.
That was my plan. But right as I was starting, I got called to set for Eternal Living Dead to meet the producer. His name's Graham Henderson, a fantastic guy. I just remember being 21 and terrified. Big British guy, very strong, burly guy with a very deep voice. The way I remember the conversation with him when I met him on set was essentially, Dan wants you to do the Half Corpse. I don't know who you are from Adam. We only have 2 weeks. If you ruin this,
You fuck up our movie, kid.
essentially, if you ruin this, I'll make sure you never work.
Oh my
again.
God.
But I'm paraphrasing, and you know.
No, yeah, but that's like basically the
But that
subtext.
that was the gist of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I remember becoming really mad,
Oh,
which was really motivating.
that's a good motivator.
And I was like, I'm going to make this guy eat shit, and I'm going to show him
Yeah.
that this was a good decision, and I'm going to deliver something really cool. I also was hit with if you want to do the Half Corpse, you have to do the Split Dogs.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I
Are
was like,
those yours?
Yeah. So I was like, okay. And there was like no money. I think I had $10,000
Which in what, like in current money or like in 80s money?
in 80s money.
Okay, that's still like
in total.
yeah, that's like nothing.
To build a body of a dead woman that comes through a window that's posable, that can get disconnected at the waist, to build a Half Corpse version that's animatronic, tied to a table, and then to build a bunch of taxidermied half dogs, one of which becomes animated. Because there was no money, my thinking was there would be 2 types of dogs, the big Labradors that they wanted, and then some smaller dogs like, little
Scottish
terriers,
Terrier.
like Toto, because I could actually afford to
Do it that size.
animate that. Yeah, because I was flying blind. I had never done an animatronic figure before. So I was going to Home Depot, and those toggle bolts you put into the walls to screw stuff in, and they have that flange thing that has a spring in it, and it sort of unfolds.
Yes.
That, to me, that's a knee joint on a dog, and that's
That's
a
a
hip
knee
joint.
joint.
So I dental acrylic those together on some rods, and I used some wire pull against those so I could make the legs move, and the same with the jaw. The eyeball was part of the sculpture, and I just shined it up with Vaseline on set.
We love a good Vaseline.
The DP was
vibe.
like, these glass eyes are amazing. Let's make sure we like these. But
They weren't.
They were foam, and they were covered with Vaseline.
Kids, put some Vaseline on some foam eyeballs and you're golden.
So just never answer what people ask you what things are made of. And
So this all had to be done before you walked on set.
yes, I had to do all this stuff
Okay.
before. The Half Corpse shot first, and then the Split Dogs were like right after that. So the Half Corpse I was building at Rick's at night, and then on the weekend. I pulled in Bill Sturgeon, who's an amazing mechanical designer and visual effects supervisor now, and he did the joints for one of the Half Corpse's hands when it's tied to the table. Did like legitimate versions, and also did like a wrist for that. And he got partway into the next one, and he had another job as well, and we could all only do so much. So one of the Half Corpse's hands is tied down, which was my decision because it didn't have any mechanics in it
Nice.
to be able to move. So I'm like, oh, I'll justify that it can't move.
Yeah.
So I tied it down. And then Scott Ressler, who's now a director of photography, he was another friend from USC. He came in to help me in the evenings.
So you had
which was great.
a small team you put together.
So they helped me out. But I was like sculpting and molding and running the foam and punching the hair. Made the eye mechanisms and the jaw. Built this whole thing, and I remember the day it was due, the night before, Scott and I were up all night, and I was bending brass wire, and I was trying to attach it to thread and pull, like to try and figure out some way to make an eyelid move
For the dog or the woman?
for the woman.
Okay, yeah.
Like last minute. And Scott's like, dude, we got to go. We got to be there in like 40 minutes. And I just gave up on it. But we worked literally to the last minute.
Jesus.
And put it on a blanket, threw it in the back of the car, and drove it to where they were shooting. And I took it to Bill Stout, who was the production designer, and I took it to his office. And I just put the blanket on the floor, and I'm like exhausted. And I said, what do you think? Because he had designed her look, and then given me some notes in addition to his design, which were make it look younger, like she used to be attractive and bright blue eyes, like some little points to add to it that I think really gave it a lot of personality. And then he also wanted to make sure her nightgown covered her nipples because he didn't know what the issues would be.
Oh, no, there's no nipple coverage here.
With ratings.
On the day, there was no nipple
No,
coverage.
well, when she comes through the window, she kind of lost her nightgown.
Yeah, I just rewatched this movie, y'all, and I did not even see. I did not even see.
In the rain, it stayed behind with the hips in the window, and the body fell
out. Yeah,
out of the clothes.
And into the
room,
to the Brian.
Yeah.
And for those of you listening at home, if you have not seen this movie, you can go watch it before we dive even deeper, or I can do a recap and explain the movie in my own words to you very quickly. If you've already seen the movie, and most likely you have if you're watching this podcast or listening to this podcast, watching this video, you can fast forward to this. The date is exactly July 3rd, 1984. We begin at the UNITA Medical Supply Warehouse, where they seem to have a lot of skeletons and cadavers. We see Foreman Frank, the new hire Freddy. Trying to impress him, Frank shows Freddy these barrels that accidentally wound up in their basement from the military years ago, which are filled with a toxic gas called trioxin. What's the worst that could happen if he banged it? Oh right, the barrel leaks and spews the toxic gas everywhere. Not only getting into Frank and Freddy's lungs, but also the air ducts. The toxin melts the cadaver inside the barrel, later known as Tarman, and the gas reanimates not only him, but the entire warehouse. Once the guys come to, they call their boss Bert for backup and trying to handle the mess they've created. They try to kill the yellow zombie man by hitting him in the head with a pickaxe, which has the gnarliest sound effect. It doesn't work, so they try sawing off its head. That doesn't work, and they discover that each dismembered limb can function on its own. The only solution left is to burn it. And wouldn't you know it, burning it creates a smoke that goes up into the stormy air and makes toxic rain. Meanwhile, we meet the gang of punk rockers Freddy is friends with. There's his girlfriend Tina, then Spider, Trash, Chuck, Casey, Suicide, and Scuzz. They wait for Freddy at the conveniently placed cemetery across the street. Trash talks about death and then gets naked and dances around, cause, 80s. Tina goes to the warehouse to get Freddy, but unfortunately discovers the tar man in the basement who teaches us that zombies can fucking talk. The rest of the group comes to the rescue, but Spider unintentionally takes one for the team and dies. The gang goes to the mortuary looking for Freddy, but is halted by reanimated corpses. Trash is ironically killed in the exact same way she mentioned earlier, and the group gets separated. Spider, Tina, and Scuzz make it to Ernie's mortuary and discover Freddy and Frank ill from the gas. The paramedics go to call for backup while the gang barricades themselves in the mortuary. As reinforcements arrive, they are immediately swarmed by the horde and the zombies kill them. Then, the zombies themselves use the radio and call in for more paramedics. Meanwhile in the mortuary, Scuzz is taken hold of by a zombie woman. She comes through the window and chomps on his head and eats his brains. Ernie basically spears her like a fish and straps her to his embalming table. Through this quote-unquote half-corpse, we learn that they eat brains to keep away the pain of being dead. Frank and Freddy, now turning, are shoved into the chapel to be locked away, and Tina absolutely refuses to leave Freddy's side. After Bert, Ernie, and Spider ask Tina several times if she's aware of the choice she's making, and Tina consenting, they lock her away. Cut to Tina screaming like she had no idea what she was signing up for, and the three getting her out. Then Frank unalives himself in the cremator. Bert tries to get help with the police car, but they are overrun by zombies. Ernie and Tina are chased by a blind Freddy and hide in the attic. Bert and Spider manage to get back to the warehouse and discover that Chuck and Casey, who I completely forgot about until now, are still alive. Together, they defeat Tarman and get a hold of the police. Unfortunately, they're also swamped with zombies at the moment, and they all die. Bert decides to call the military number on the side of the barrels and informs Officer Glover of what is happening. The film ends with this guy straight up bombing the entire town, killing any potential survivors. And then in true horror fashion, we discover this was all part of the military's plan. It was only a small casualty in the grand scheme of things since they knew the barrels were floating around somewhere for the past several years. Unbeknownst to Officer Asshole, the toxic rain starts once again and we're set up for another sequel as zombies start to rise from the ground. I have some questions about how some things were tackled in the SFX department.
Okay, wait, stop.
What?
The exterior of the graveyard?
It says resuscitation, resurrection cemetery.
If you go to the brewery,
The brewery.
downtown, it's an art district. There's a whole section.
Oh, you're talking about real life right now.
In real life,
Okay,
in LA.
What about it?
There's an area where there's train tracks, and then there's this whole brewer area, which is just a big artist community. They built the fence in front of, and the wall in front of the train tracks and blocked the train tracks, so you can't see them. But that whole area is all still there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because it's set in Louisville, but you guys shot here in LA.
Yeah, everything was shot here. The majority of it was on
A stage.
a sound stage, which wasn't even a legit sound stage. It was some building in Burbank that was, I think, a manufacturing facility. I mean, everything was done so inexpensively. Brian Peck's wardrobe, all the buttons on his jacket are all his own.
Oh, that's kind of nice.
Does he got involved in his own character's look. They were just really smart with how they spent the money. And then when they had to sell the movie, they said it cost twice as much as it really cost them to make it because their budget was so low. They were embarrassed. So they made a little bit of profit off of it, and they got some great songs in it.
They did. I read that it's like a lot of like local rock, like
punk
people,
like 55 Grave. The bass player in that's Pat Smears from Foo Fighters. So.
Why did we not talk about this on Studio 666?
When we were on set for it, Pat and I talked about it.
Oh my God, what a small world.
Yeah, but it's not like he was on set or anything. It's just that his music was used, which was really cool.
Yeah, the score is really good. Also, the theme song.
Oh, very beginning?
It's fucking amazing. Where is it? Sorry, I have to play this. No, just to play it.
Yeah, the song is great, and then the visuals with the Tarman melting, and then all the stuff down the tunnels, and the gas coming in and reanimating the corpse hanging on the hooks. I mean, everything about that is just so. It moves you through the scenes so well, and it sets up everything, and the music is
so good for a low budget film. How did this was one of my questions is we're gonna maybe I'll try and go through this chronologically so it makes more sense. But this first shot of Tarman melting, how the fuck do you do that?
Wax. That was Kenny Meyer's guys. It was just a big wax version of the Tarman sculpture with eyeballs and teeth mounted in it, so that
it's actually melting.
Was blasted with a heat gun, and it's actually melted on camera.
Oh my God!
And then sped up. The blast from the heat gun pushes everything back behind the head. So when you're shooting straight down at it, everything just kind of
oh my God
goes around the back of the head.
It's beautiful. Is it? And so then is it like different layers of the wax are different colors? So that's how you get that effect.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And then the camera's just locked off, I assume.
And then they added the smoke in
post.
Separately.
What was that?
Sounds like a dog.
A dog?
A sliced in half dog. This is the 80s. How do you know what that looks like? You can't just Google dead dog insides.
If you go in the scene in the office.
Yes.
Before when the two guys are talking about going down in the basement to open the barrel.
Yeah.
There's a poster on the wall that has a dog cut in half.
Oh, there we go. There's the dead dog.
Yeah, it's right behind Tom Matthews on the wall. There's I think there's a deer and then there's a dog. So I tried to copy that, but instead of being exact to that, the idea was this would be more like sawed in half.
Right.
As opposed to the artwork left full organs. I
was
trying to make it look like
you
some
actually
happy
sawed
middle
it.
ground.
What did you use for the fur? Fur?
It was just like yak hair and.
Is anyone
hair.
allergic to yaks?
No,
that's
yak
great.
hair was kind of what you buy to build animals with, and I figured a terrier it would be all stiff and wiry like that. And yak hair looks like that already. So to me, that was a perfect approach to take to it. And then again, I kept it small so that I could manage it in my zero budget.
Good luck paying me back on your $0 a year salary plus benefits paid.
Again, there was no money for
No, that
VFX,
makes sense.
and there was no such thing as digital effects. So it's like, how do you do this for real? So like when the half dogs get knocked off the shelf, there's a pipe that runs through the body of the dog and mounts them to like a wooden base.
Yes.
And all the cables for the dog's movements run through that pipe.
Oh, that's
But
smart.
we're shooting on a cement floor in a real building,
Oh,
so
shit.
we had plastic wrap and stuff
That
on
you
the
hid
floor
it
that
with.
it landed in that hid the
You
cable.
sneaky snake.
So it's always about trying to like figure out the easiest, cheapest way, because again, you couldn't
No
digitally
money.
remove a cable because that wasn't an option
No.
at
so.
the time. But like there's a scene where there's butterflies in a case
I saw that and they move.
and the butterflies come alive. Best, cheapest thing I've ever seen. They color Xeroxed some butterfly artwork from some picture, cut out all the butterflies in paper, folded the paper in half, pinned it to the frame just along the spine, had no cover on it, and they hit it with a blow dryer. So the wings
Oh my
just do
God.
that, so it looks like it's alive.
But then what do you do about the sound of a hair dryer going off?
They didn't use the sound. They
Wow.
completely dubbed the...
They dubbed that shit.
And then they had really cool, weird music when that happened.
Yeah.
We can think. Come on, okay.
But there's some great shots, like before that corpse comes into the room, the camera like punches in on the door that it's coming
Yes.
through. Like 3 times it gets closer, and they're very specific movements. And there's just some really, really cool camera stuff in this. And I think that's what, it's just interesting on so many levels.
There is the cadaver, and they're trying to
the very
figure out.
beginning.
Yes. They're trying to figure out how they kill a reanimated corpse, and with some knowledge, because Night of the Living Dead had already come out, and it's meta. They they decapitate the head, and like the reason I particularly bring that up is my dad has done multiple decapitated people who still have life bodies moving with their head cut off in film, specifically Hocus Pocus with Billy Butcherson. So I just assumed that he had done this cadaver as well, but you didn't.
No, that was the yellow cadaver. The very first body is the catalyst for Bill Munn's leaving the production.
What?
Bill Munns did a version that was called Mr. Tooth by the cast because it was a very odd suit that somebody wore, and it reminded someone of a giant tooth costume from some weird school, like after school, like brush your teeth kids kind of.
Brusha, here's the new iPad.
Nobody was happy with the way Mr. Tooth looked. They didn't think that it looked like a headless body. So Kenny Myers came in to do an alternate version, and they cast a guy in the shop named Larry O'Dean. They cast his body and cut his head off and used that as something that a smaller, shorter person could wear around as a suit with fake arms sticking out so that it was more proportionate from the waist up. And then the legs weren't, but they framed it out. So it was just different approaches to try and achieve the same
Goal.
the same effect. Yeah. And Kenny Myers' version of that
Is this yellow
kind of
man?
won the contest, and then Kenny kept going with the show and took over
A lot
everything.
of the other stuff.
But the body that gets knocked down, the guy who's running, his body's color scheme had been established by Bill Munns, which is sort of like a mustard yellow.
Yeah, it was
like
very
solid.
It was very
color.
yellow. It
Yeah.
was very yellow. I wasn't gonna say anything, but
So when he gets knocked down, it's a stunt guy who gets knocked down, and then they put they take a stunt axe and like run it through its head,
yes.
and then there's a fake head that has eyes that move and mouth that moves, I think, that's pinned to the ground by the axe point. And Larry O'Dean, whose body was used as the character, did the mechanics in the head and then operated
weird.
the mechanics. So Larry's puppeteering a head that's not his head. They came off his body, while a shorter stunt person is wearing his body and standing up and running around.
Oh,
and then
that
they
must
also
be
shot the real stunt guy and framed out his head, like through
Whoa.
through the shelves for some of that, so that they could get more of a wider body shot. And then the suit that Alan Troutman wore as the Tarman, once he's out of the barrel
Yes.
and melting, that was, I think, built by Bill Munz's team, and then Kenny Myers took it and like sort of vamped it up a bit, and I think redid the head
Okay.
as well. I'm not 100% sure, but Alan Troutman is amazing with movement, and he basically had like a lot of foam latex drips and stuff hanging off of him that would follow through on his movements. And he's actually a puppeteer in real life, and he's Mr. Snuffleupagus on
What?
Sesame Street.
Mr. Snuffleupagus is Tarman from Return of the
Yeah.
Living Dead.
Oh, hello, bird.
And when he opens his mouth, that's actually Alan's tongue. His mouth was painted black.
Oh.
He's just sticking his real tongue out past his teeth into the fake head's teeth.
When you pause it, you can see it. It's just basically a big mask.
Yeah, with a jaw that hinges, and it had some mechanics in it for like the brows.
How are the mechanics getting operated?
It's just cable, and they only used them when it was like a close-up.
A close-up, so
it's
from
like
the
a-
back.
It was like a handle, like push-pull handle.
I see. How does it look like? It's so good. How does he look so wet and tarry?
He was covered in goo, and then right before they'd shoot, they'd dump some more like Methicil right on top.
It's
of it.
Methicil though.
Yeah.
That.
Which is a food additive that is used in milkshakes at your local fast food places to thicken it, and it's used in gravy and other food products.
You can get it at your local grocery store, or no?
I don't know. We use it in the blob to make the blob.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's we use it in industrial grade and bought in bulk. But
Oh my God.
There was a company called Trias Sciences where you could buy a lot of this stuff in smaller
Yeah.
quantities.
I wanted to use Methicil on a music video I recently did, and I asked my dad about the blob, and then he told me that it gets everywhere. So
It doesn't come out, and it doesn't dry, and you can't wash it off.
but this was fine because this was a set.
Yeah. Did you notice when Suicide falls, Tarman's like holding onto his head, but Tarman's getting pushed backwards across the floor
No.
because he's so slimy. He can't get any traction on the cement floor. So he just gets pushed by Mark Venturini's body leaning forward.
Oh,
He literally
whoa.
skates backwards.
It looks so good.
Yeah, and it was lit.
Really well.
Jacques Haitkin was the DP, I believe. And his lighting, I mean, he really embraced the whole comic book style. And like when the Tarman is in the basement, he really tried to minimalize the lighting and keep it all top down so that Ellen's mask sort of disappeared and all you saw was the silhouette and sort of like the highlights of the body.
Yeah.
You know, like the rib cage and stuff like that. So everything went to black as far as a color so that it would disappear. But once it was glossed up, then the mask was again super obvious. So they came up with a really great way to light it so that he still looked super thin. And Alan's a very thin guy to begin with, so it really made a difference.
It just does not look like a guy in a mask. It's
Yeah.
so good.
And they really built out the shoulders to balance out the head, which I thought was really smart.
That is smart. Speaking of smart, this film is like revolutionary in zombies. I didn't realize this. That's the end of that sentence. I didn't realize this, that this is not only is this Tarman uses a freaking chain to get a door off of a thing. Not only that, these bitches sprint
Yeah, there's a
and they
couple things.
talk.
Yeah, and this is also the film that started the
Brains.
concept of zombies eat brains.
I didn't know this.
And the half corpse is the one that says it.
I know.
And explains that they eat brains to make the pain go away. So basically, it's like eating endorphins right out of the brain to ease your pain of
knowing that
rotting.
you're rotting.
Pain.
What about the pain?
The pain of being dead.
That's crazy. You're part of like zombie cinema history. I understand now. I
Yeah.
understand.
And that sort of started the whole zombies eat brains.